All right, well, good morning. We are looking at chapter 11 this morning in our book on Apologetics, the reason for God. And today we're looking at the role of religion in God's plan. If you remember last week, we took a pretty deep dive into what sin is and how God uses it, why that sin is a very good marker and pointer towards the fact that there is a God and that it is a Christian God. So we looked at that, but now we're going to take more of a look today at the response that brings forward. If we know there is sin, then the first question comes is, what do we do about it? What do we do with it? And so we're taking a look today at how Christianity answers the question. Now, what is religion? Let me just ask you that to get us going. What's religion? Just generically, not necessarily Christianity, but just generically. What's Christian? Or excuse me, what is religion? What are we trying to decide or find when we make up a religion or when we have a religion?
Belief in a higher power.
Okay, that's basically what religion is. It is the path to God. Generically, like I said, it's any number of ways. You can say Islam is a religion because it details and gives people a pathway to God. Hinduism is a religion. Buddhism is a religion. All basically deal with finding a pathway to God. That's why we can call Christianity a religion, but we don't want to ever leave it there because Christianity is a way to God. Now, we would say it's the true way. It is the only way, that all the others fall short. But that's basically what we're talking about. Anytime you hear somebody use the word religion, they're talking about a way to find to find God, or even more generically, maybe higher meaning. And that being the case, what would you call secularism? The belief that there is no God. I think we can go ahead and call that a religion too, even though it's not pointing directly towards a higher power or a higher being. Secularism still is pointing to a higher belief, if you will. You got to be, if you're secular, you don't believe there is a God, but by the same token, that's a faith statement right there. Saying there is no God takes just as much faith as it does to say there is a God. And secularism, if you look at it, if you truly believe, takes on a lot of the aspects that we see in all kinds of various religions around. And it also is providing a pathway for people, non-believers, but providing a pathway for people to deal with what happens after life. And that would be, in their case, darkness. But it is still a religion. That's why we struggle so much when people who are not Christians or who are atheists start talking about how we have to get religion out of the public schools. Because if you're going to get religion out of the public schools, that includes secularism, because that's as much a religion as any faith-based religion is. So they're left with a problem with that. But anyway, it is a religion when you get right down to it. So let's go a little bit further, though. All religions in some way, shape, or form show the way to salvation, or show a way. This is where we start to get into a distinction between Christianity and the rest of the religions. Anybody want to take a thought? What is it that separates Christianity pretty much from every other religion, every other belief system out there, as far as, when it talks about the road to salvation?
Well, for Christianity, it's not based on what we do, what Christ did for us.
Yeah, that's a lot of it right there. It is based on what Christ did. Christianity is the only religion out there where the founder of the religion, if you will, or the base prophet, teacher of the religion, didn't just say, I'm going to teach you the way of salvation. He became the way of salvation by his death on the cross and his resurrection. One of the best verses in the Bible, Jesus himself says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. It's only through him that we come to God. Name me another religion that has that, or where the founder or the main teacher is the way to God. When you think of Islam, what do we think of? Muhammad. But Muhammad doesn't say, you get to Allah through me. He says, I'm a pointer along the way. I point to Allah. I teach you about Allah. I tell you how to have salvation through him. But I don't provide it in and of myself. And that's where we get back to what Penny was talking about, where literally every other religion out there brings you to salvation, whatever they consider to be salvation, through your own effort, through your own moral effort, or what you try and do. In Islam, if you ever study it, they have the 5 basic ways where, if you're praying 5 times a day, if you're giving alms, if you're, calling on Allah, those are the ways you do it, and they get you there if you're doing them. Hinduism, it's another one. Hinduism teaches you that you are to live a moral life, you're to live a good life in the hope that when you come to the end of your life, you will be absorbed into the great oneness that is out there. And if you're not, then you get reincarnated. You take another shot at it. Now, sometimes you move forward in reincarnation, sometimes you move back, but you're coming back and you're doing it all over again until you get it right, until you reach nirvana. It's up to you how you do it. And we can go through any religion you want. And sooner or later, we will get to, it's up to you to do what they say. Follow the path of Buddha in your life, and hopefully you will get someday to nirvana. Now, does anybody see any problem with that? What would be the problem with knowing that you have to do something in order to get salvation?
Faith by works versus...
Well, you're right. It is faith by works, but why is faith by works a problem? Why is salvation by works?
We're sinners by nature. We can never do it.
Okay.
But then it has to do with what I did,
Mm-hmm.
not what about what God did,
Yep.
or has done,
Mm-hmm.
or will do.
Mm-hmm. It has to do with what you've done, but how do you know you've ever done enough? That's the one major issue, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Buddhist, whatever you are, you never really know if I've done enough. Am I falling short? Have I gotten where I'm supposed to be? That becomes a problem. And that brings itself to 2 issues with any religion, again, outside of Christianity. If it depends on your works, let's suppose that you are a very good Hindu and you are not stepping on living creatures, you are treating the cows with all the due respect that they get, you're living life exactly the way you are supposed to do, and you are, the paragon that the village Hindu people point to and say, this is what a good Hindu looks like. What does that do for you? I mean, on a human level, how does that make you feel? Pride, exactly. Makes you feel good. Look at me. I'm the one who's got it all together. The rest of you guys down there kind of struggling. I'm on my way to nirvana. You're not. Pride. And so when you're dealing with a work system of salvation and you're doing it right, you tend to get self-righteous. You tend to become proud. You tend to start looking down on those other poor folk who just don't have quite the spirit that you do. You can see that, and so you get that, and you're getting very self-righteous, and it can lead to all kinds of judgmentalism and self-righteousness, pride, arrogance, all of those things. And that. So that,
Start to come hand in hand once you let one into your life.
yes, it does. Now, what happens if you're not this paragon of Hindu virtue? Let's say that you are a Muslim and you're scrapping away and, it's really tough and you aren't quite getting all 5 prayers each day in at the time you're supposed to. You really don't like the beggars, so you have a problem tossing them alms. You really are just, kind of having a problem doing all this. And I'm coming up short. Yeah.
What you were saying about they were taking the Bible out of schools, but this has probably been about 18 years ago. My brother and my family lived up in Minnesota. I didn't move with them. They lived up in Minnesota, and I came up for a visit, and I went to pick him up from school one day, and I went into the school and I saw, at the time I didn't realize what it was, but they had essentially the 5 pillars of Islam right there on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I come to find out later, I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Mm-hmm. It's true. You'll find that all around. But back to my question, though, you're the Muslim that's not quite getting up there. How does it make you feel?
Not good enough.
Not good about yourself. You're saying, you know what? I see these other Muslims and they're getting the prayer mats out and they're doing it right when they're supposed to. I got no problems giving the alms and doing the things that I am supposed to be doing. And I'm just not measuring up. So you get, if you're not making it, the exact opposite side of the coin for the guy who is. You got self-righteous, pride, arrogance. If you aren't doing it, if you're coming up short and you're saying to yourself, boy, God must be kind of angry with me and I'm just not doing it, and you're feeling bad about yourself, about your relationship with God. It's an internal thing. I'm not saying that necessarily shows all around, but it's internal. And what does it lead to? Instead of self-righteousness, leads to anger. Now, when I say anger, I don't necessarily mean lashing out, although it can. You look at the guy who is doing it right, and you maybe trip him on his way to his prayer rug because you're mad because he's doing it right and you're not. There's that envy, that jealousy that comes. Or you may not show that at all. You may recognize and pay homage to the guys that are doing it right, but inside, you're angry. You're angry at yourself. Anger itself, depression is basically where that leads. And it can lead to a sense of hopelessness. So whichever that you're doing, if you are in a works-based religion, which is literally everyone but Christianity, you're going to fall into one of those traps. You can't help it. It doesn't matter which side you're on. If you're the one doing it right, you're going to be getting the plaudits. It's very going to be easy for pride, self-righteousness to take over. If you're not doing it right, it's going to be easy to be angry, either at the others or at yourself or at God because he's made this so hard and you can't do it. There's going to be some anger involved. But either way, you're stuck. There is no real hopeful way. So you ask yourself this question that we've asked all along. Does it make sense that God would set it up so that whatever you do, you're in a double bind? You can't win. Yeah, it really doesn't. And so, that's one reason why, and we'll take a look at Christianity here again in just a second. But I'm looking at other religions. I've been kind of pointing at Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, whatever. What about Christianity? And what about our roots? Do we see the same problem in?
Some cases,
Yeah.
Some cases, yeah.
Okay.
Catholicism, I'd say, has a lot of.
Well, what's the works-based religion that Christianity is built on?
Catholic Church.
No. Close. I understand what you're saying, but no. What's the basic foundation for Christianity? What religion Do we spring out of Judaism? What is Judaism? Works-based righteousness. That's the whole thing that Paul, Jesus talks about. And what are some of the best examples in the New Testament of people who are stuck in this trap of works-based righteousness? Pharisees. All you have to do is look at the Bible, look at the way Jesus deals with Pharisees, because he picks up everything we're talking about here. He points to the Pharisees because either they're strutting around saying, I get the best seats in the temple, and look at me, and I'm dumping my coins in the purse of the beggar, and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, and being very self-righteous about it. Or else they're praying and they're looking at the tax gatherer beside them who isn't as good as they are and saying, thank you, Lord, for not making me as this man. You've got the self-righteousness going on there. And the other half of it is all of the people who aren't Pharisees are angry. They're the ones that are down and trodden down because these Pharisees are looking down at them. They're dealing with anger too. This is why Jesus comes into the situation, because sin is there and it ain't being dealt with. It's not, because there is no way that you can deal with it, through, through works. It's works, righteousness is always going to lead to more sin. Whatever direction it goes, it can't help it. That's why Jesus has to come. That's why Christianity is the only answer to the issue of sin that is in the world today, that we talk so much about, because nothing else can deal with it. It's got to be, Christianity that through Jesus. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit here, where, since we can't find it any other way, if we're not going to do works-based, the only religion out there that is not works-based in some way, shape, or form, as we said, is Christianity. And that's because Christianity is based on not works, but on what? Faith. Or better yet, grace. It's grace that comes from God himself, who recognizes the problem that sees and sends Jesus down to bring grace to us and make it available to us. It's kind of interesting, if you think about it, with every other religion out there. You can put it in a nutshell, because what their motto would be is, I obey, therefore I am accepted by God. And just as we've been talking, if I obey, therefore I'm accepted by God is what the standard is, then if I obey and I'm doing it right, I get self-righteous. And if I obey or I'm not obeying and I'm not doing it right, I get depressed and I get angry. The one thing I don't get is salvation. I can't. My sin isn't really dealt with because I don't know exactly what I have to do and how much I have to do it in order to be saved. I'm just stuck in a loop. No matter how good the loop looks, no matter how well I try and deal with it, I'm still stuck in that loop where the only way I'm accepted by God is if I obey, and I never know if I'm obeying enough. You're in a problem. With Christianity, with a grace-based religion, which Christianity is the only one, I am accepted by God through what Christ has done, therefore I obey. And if you can see the subtle difference there, but the difference is there, I'm accepted by God not because I obey, I'm accepted by God because of Christ's obedience, what Christ has done, and therefore because that, I obey. And the difference, what we see here, is motivation. What's the motivation in the first one? If I obey, therefore I'm accepted by God. What's your motivation to obey? Why would you do it? Please him, or fear. Why do you want to please him? He's God. He holds my soul in his hand. He holds my eternity in his hand. I'm going to obey him. I want to obey him because I want him to look on me and accept me, and that I'm afraid of what happens if I don't obey him. Because if I don't obey him, and he holds my hand and he says, I accept you only if you obey me, I'm in trouble. So fear is the basic motivation that comes out of that. What's the basic motivation for a Christian? I am accepted by God through what Christ has done. Therefore I obey. What's my motivation to obey? Not fear.
Wanting a relationship with God.
Wanting a relationship is a very good one, and but why do I want a relationship with this God? What has he done for me? He's gone to the cross. He sent his son to pay the penalty for my sin. I have nothing to do with it. So,
Grace and love.
huh?
Grace and love.
Yeah, gratitude. Exactly. What motivates, or what should motivate us as Christians, is not fear, because we've already been accepted. Done, over with. The transaction has been made the second you became a Christian. And so you don't obey out of fear. We need to obey out of gratitude. That should be the motive that we have for obedience. It's not that we don't obey, but it's the motivation of why we obey. And it makes, a very, what do I want to say? It puts us in a position where, when we're obeying out of gratitude, we're doing it, and it's not out of fear, so there's not the pressure. There's not that sort of fear of the whip lying over us. It's the difference between working, if you will, for a good boss and a bad boss, in the human terms. Because, we're going to go, that's where we're at. But also, it can make, this is where we get nuanced a little bit. Suppose you're going out one day and you decide, it's Sunday, got to go to church, the offering plate's going to come around, and so I'm going to put my check on the offering plate. Why are you doing it? Why are you putting that in there?
Giving back to God what he's given us.
Okay, giving back to him, that's a good reason. And gratitude. Why else might you be doing it?
Obedience.
Okay, but are you obeying out of gratitude? Or are you putting it in there because, I'm not so sure about this. So, I think I'm saved, but I'm gonna put my money in the offering plate just to kind of appease God. Exactly. The same act can come from a different place. It can be righteous, or it can be good. It can be out of gratitude, or the act can be out of fear. I know he went to the cross. I know he died for me. I know I prayed to be saved, but I'm just not quite positive. So I need to be giving and putting my money in the plate just to make sure that I'm still on God's good side. Just to make sure. This is kind of where you get what you were talking about, Penny. Again, we pick on Catholics a lot. But there is that motivation there. Priest tells me that I'm saved, I've been baptized, I've had sacraments and so forth. But, there's always purgatory hanging over my head. I probably need to give in order to keep this God happy with me. And I'm giving out of fear. And that is a big problem. And it's a big problem. Like I said, this is kind of nuanced, but think about it. If you're giving and you're putting your money in the offering plate out of fear, how does it make you feel when, I had a good week this week, we've got extra, I'm going to kick in an extra $100 this week, and I put my check on the plate. How does it make you feel? Proud? Happy? Saying, you know what? God must be really pleased. I kicked in an extra 100. And so if I'm acting out of fear, it makes me feel good about myself. And maybe I watch the plate going down the aisle and I see somebody only put a few bucks in. Somebody passed it by. Get that self-righteousness, that kind of good feeling about yourself and what you did. We're back to exactly what I was talking about earlier with fear-based religion or works-based, because when I do something right, even if I'm a Christian, even if I'm putting it in the plate in church, and even if I'm doing it because, I know that God like you say, I'm doing it not out of gratitude, but because I'm giving back to Him. So the mindset can come there. And you will see this, by the way, in different churches. Even churches out there, we've all had experience with some of them where they're works-based, even if they deny it. Because, we believe in salvation and by faith and by grace, but we're watching to see how much you're putting in that plate. Or we're watching to see what you're doing. Are you going to a movie? Are you going to the right movie? Or are you going to the wrong movie? And you very easily build back into this situation of self-righteousness, or, like I said, you're sitting beside the guy who had the good week, who drops the extra 100 in the offering plate, and you're sticking in your $10, thinking, and man, I can't even afford this, but because my kids need soccer shoes or whatever. But, and you're looking at him and you get angry. Either you get angry at yourself, you kind of say, you know what, I ought to be a better Christian and I'm not doing right, and God is probably up there looking and He's saying, your kid doesn't need the shoes that bad, you should have given me another 20. You're just not doing quite what you're supposed to. Or I get angry, maybe at the guy next to me. How come I don't have as good a job as he does? How come I don't get the blessings that he does? Why is God doing it for him and not for me? How come I'm not in the position and that? And very quickly, you can see how it kind of builds. Now, what is all that to say? We really have to be careful as Christians. And what we have to be careful about is our identity. We talked a little bit about our identity last week, and with regard to sin. We're put in a position as Christians where we need to really think about what our identity is. And I would ask, what's your identity? How do you identify in your heart or outside? And I'm not going to actually put you on the carpet and say, you have to tell me. But if our identity is not really looking at Christ and saying, I am a child of God, beloved by Him, then it's going to be kind of really easy to fall into this trap. And I will say even further, it's not only easy, but it's common. But as long as we can go back, as long as we step back and say, you know what, I am kind of ticked off that I don't have $100 extra to put in the plate like this guy beside me, but I don't have to be mad at him because God is blessing him. I can rejoice in the fact God is really doing a work in him, or doing something through him, or doing something for him, and I get to sit beside him and I get to see it, and I get to see the example, and I can find the good thing. Or I can look at myself and I can say, I only have $10. But you know what? God doesn't care. God looks at me. He sees a child of his who his son died for, and who is who is receiving my love, I don't have to worry about it and get angry about it and feel depressed inside or angry at the world or angry at the people around me. I can have peace. Peace that comes from knowing God loves me. And it gets back to like, I am accepted by God through what Christ has done. And what I mean, and I go back to that because it's only if we can hold two thoughts in our mind that seem contradictory. One, I'm so flawed. I am such a worthless, evil sinner that Jesus himself had to die for me. I couldn't die for myself. Nobody could die for me. It took the Son of God himself, and he's the only one that had the ability to come down, take my sin, and pay it. I couldn't do it. Nobody else could do it for me. He's the only one that could do it. I am that flawed. But on the other hand, as you hold that thought in mind, the other half of you needs to hold the thought in mind, I am so loved by God that Jesus did it gladly. That he came down to die on that cross, to die for me with as evil as I am, with all the sin I had. And he did it because he wanted to, because he loved me that much. Holding those two in your hands keeps you, first of all, from, being self-righteous. I don't care how much you put in the plate. I don't care how much the guy next to you put in the plate. He still had to have Jesus come down and die for him, irregardless. There was nothing that he could do, and it doesn't mean that he's, paying his way or anything else. So I don't have to be angry at him, and I don't have to be jealous of him. He's the same place I am. And at the same time, I don't have to be angry with myself, because as bad as I was, Jesus loved me enough that he would come down and do it gladly so that he could pay the price for my sin. I am that loved. If you can balance them, you've got deep humility along with deep confidence. This is kind of what we were talking about in the men's group today, trying to balance those two out. So we're never going to do it perfectly in this life. But as far as what we're talking about and how it works with apologetics, no other religion actually has this balance between the deep humility and the deep confidence. You're going to have one or the other, but whatever religion, if it's based on works, you're going to have one or the other, and both of them just lead you down the path to sin. If there is a God, and he really is who he says he is, what kind of religion is he going to give us? If he's going to give us a works-based religion, it's because he's evil. Hands down. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what he's preaching, what he's pushing. If that's what your religion is pointing you to, it's pointing you to an evil God. One that, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't exist. But if there is a God, and there is sin, who's got the perfect solution to that sin? It's not works-based, because that just leads it, any way you do it, to more deeper, worse sin in you. It never deals with it. Jesus Christ, God the Father, gave us a religion of grace. And if you think about it, he's the only one, and Christianity is the only religion that gives you a way of avoiding the trap of self-righteousness or self-anger. Because on the one hand, you can't be self-righteous knowing that you were so bad it took God himself to come down and die for you. But you can't be so angry with yourself if you're looking and saying, yeah, I was that bad. But that same God did it because the depth of his love for me was so deep. God covers both bases that we've been talking about. He gets both sides of the coin right. And I would suggest to you that if you're looking at any other religion, that you're looking in a way that's not going to be covered by sin, or that's not going to deal with sin correctly. So I'm just going to leave it with that for this morning for us, that we don't worship Jesus because we have to obey him. We do it out of gratitude and our understanding that we were so bad, but his love was so deep. Trying to hold those two in tension, but if we can hold those two, that will give us precisely what we need. And that's why God designed it that way. And that's why every other religion out there is wrong. So, any questions for me this morning? Anything you want to ask about or cast stones about? All right. In that case, next week we will go on to. Wait a minute. Let me see. Today is. I'm sorry. I won't be here next week. I'll be up in Marshalltown. So 2 weeks from today, we will be looking at chapter 12, and we're getting close. Yep.